Welcome to another 2 hours of self-righteous, God-fearing pomposity, and it's good to have all of you with us here at the end of the week, 4 days away from Election Day. Here in Idaho, early voting comes to an end today. So if you haven't, and you had belief that you could go save some time by voting before Election Day when there will be long lines, today would be your last day to actually do that. And some of us actually decided to see what it was like, and we ended up voting, in my case, 6 days ago. There will be no changes. I'm not seeking a do-over, and I do understand I can't go back. Well, I'm a Republican, so I can't go back and vote twice. You Democrats may be looking at that and saying, well, I could vote here. I can vote in Jerome. I can go vote in Rupert. I can go vote. Have at it, I guess. Just wanted to point out a couple of things we're doing today. Coming up after 9 o'clock this morning, we'll be joined by Forrest Anderson from Washington Street Pawn. Forrest will be talking about firearms with me. We do this every Friday morning, and we take some of your telephone calls too because people do have a lot of questions out there. More and more Idahoans, I think, are arming themselves for self-defense and for the defense of their home and as well as really their family, everything that's dear to them. So we'll be talking about that coming up in the next hour. Did you see a story anywhere in the last 24 hours? I happened to catch this last night before I went to bed. A writer at a publication called Mediaite was sitting around his house the other night during Game 7 of the World Series, and he was sending out tweets, I guess is what you call them, on his Twitter account. And these were running down Donald Trump and talking about how dangerous it would be to have Donald Trump as president. So obviously this guy's a flaming liberal. And then he suddenly became alarmed because he saw some fans holding up a sign at the ballpark, and he thought that it was terrible that the Ku Klux Klan had come to the baseball stadium and they were holding up signs that read KKK. Well, people got a quick screenshot of what he happened to say, and he actually has since, how shall we put it, he's been schooled by baseball fans around the country who explained to him in baseball, the K is the symbol for a strikeout. So if a pitcher has 3 strikeouts, by the time he gets to number 3, fans in some parts of the stadium will be holding up KKK for the 3 strikeouts. You get it? And with that, Mediaite has now said, well, he didn't really mean that. There was just some Twitter conversation about what it meant and trying to back away from it slowly. But it shows you that if you're clueless, and I guess a great many liberals are, that you should perhaps somebody should take your cell phone away from you so you can't sit there and tweet all night long. Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. You can read more about that particular story if you go to our website and you check it out, because I make it clear the Klan was not at the World Series. And I even have a link in my story about it to what this guy was writing, so you can check that out. It really happened. And as I say, yeah, you can't make up a lot of this stuff as you go along. It's just liberals are so out of control and so whacked in the head. You got to expect these things are going to continue. Speaking of the KKK, Kellyanne Conway, who's been managing Donald Trump's political campaign, was making an appearance on the Clinton News Network, known by the acronym CNN, and she was appearing with Chris Cuomo, whose dad was the Marxist governor of New York State for 12 years when I lived there, and his older brother Andrew, who his dad liked better, is the current Marxist governor of that state. So Andrew Cuomo and his younger brother Chris, they probably didn't fall far from the tree, but one of them has a job as a news anchor at CNN, and you can pretty much know from his family history that he is very biased with what he does. He tried to tell Kellyanne Conway yesterday that Trump was right. Indeed, there is voter intimidation and fraud going on, but it's going on in North Carolina where Trump's friends in the KKK are intimidating black voters. Conway was having nothing to do with Mr. Cuomo's comments. Here she is, by the way, battling him on CNN. When he says something stupid along the lines that media's job is to protect, he says it, to protect the people that Trump calls names.
Nobody has brought
not
negativity to the race the way Trump
That's
has.
not fair. I mean, he's had an unprecedented deluge of negative coverage.
against him.
Because he says outrageous things, targeting groups of people that usually the media is trying to protect, not watch be exposed for their vulnerabilities. Chris, that has to factor into it,
Chris,
no?
when he is talking about, you said he's railing against Obamacare, there's a reason for that.
Absolutely.
These premiums are going up 116% in Arizona, 53% up in Pennsylvania, a state where I'll be with Melania Trump today and Donald Trump tomorrow. We're going to win the blue state because his message of trade and illegal immigration and jobs, when he goes to Pennsylvania, he says to the men and women there, your jobs got shipped to Mexico and China, I'll bring them back.
I would like all of the police officers and sheriff's deputies listening this morning to take the day off. You can go home now because the media is there protecting people. Chris Cuomo said it's what the media's main job is. It's the media's job to look out for these people and protect them from the meat old Mr. Trump. So those of you who've made law enforcement careers out of your lives, and you didn't know that, I'm sure, but you no longer need to be on the job because the intrepid reporting staffs of all of our local media outlets will now be taking care of people who are living in the area, especially if someone calls them a bad name. Now, the killer of Kate Steinle in San Francisco, Trump was spot on. Some of them, as he put it, not all, some of them are killers and rapists. When he was referring to people who come here illegally, that, of course, is breaking the law as well. But Mr. Cuomo is making that clear for us. Media's job is now to protect those people, and law enforcement can go home. So she invited Cuomo to come to a Trump rally. Now, I told you the story yesterday about a college professor from Baltimore, Maryland, who is a flaming liberal who decided to go see what all of these Trumpists were like. So she drove to a rally in Virginia, and she was stunned to find out that she liked the people and that they were overwhelmingly decent people. And she said Trump hearing him speak is exhilarating. So Kellyanne Conway says to Mr. Cuomo, she says, well, then why don't you come and see what this is all about? And all he wants to do is talk about being a self-obsessed person in the media.
15,000 people will be there in Hershey, Pennsylvania tomorrow night. And you know what?
How many will be booing me when I walk into the place?
Zero.
And if Trump makes eye contact with me, what's the chance he calls me out like he did Katie Tur, as if it's some kind of sport?
But this election is not about you or even about Donald Trump. It's about the people. And it took somebody, honestly, to live his version of the American dream and run for president who's so far outside the system that he's a credible messenger to shake it up. Look, you've gotten Hillary Clinton, somebody who's not under one, but 2 FBI investigations. That's not normal.
What a wimp. People would boo me because he'd call me out. He'd see me and make eye contact, and people would boo me, and it would hurt my feelings, and that wouldn't be nice. Man, tell you what, he should have grown up in my neighborhood. Bill Colley with you this morning. I'm going to call it, 8:14. Thank you for joining us. A little chilly out today. I don't think it's as bad as yesterday, and we're going to be looking at some warmer weather this weekend. Temperatures up in the mid-60s and no rain in sight anytime soon. Real Clear Politics has a piece today by a writer named Peter Berkowitz. Now, you got to remember Cuomo is just a Democrat who is looking to protect his own party while he is on the air at CNN. And they believe that liberalism is a self-evident truth. There is a Polish writer by the name of Ryszard Lagutko who has put together a book called The Demon in Democracy, Totalitarian Temptations in Free Societies. I've got to get a copy of this. It sounds like it might be a little bit long-haired, but, it could be some good reading, and it could get right to the point. And remember, he lived under a communist regime in Poland, and he writes, or at least the reporter says that he writes, like communism, contemporary liberal democracy regards history as progressive and is culminating within itself, or with itself. Convinced that history is on their side and so impatient with the old distinction between the public realm, subject to state control of the private sphere where individuals live within broad limits as they deem fit, contemporary liberal democracies increasingly demand that everything that exists in society must become liberal democratic over time and be imbued with the spirit of the system. Now, what does he mean by that? Well, this is the unifying principle. That's why while Republicans squabble and have become, remember years ago, in the 1930s, Will Rogers said he belonged to no organized political party. He was a Democrat. Well, that has been flipped because Republicans now squabble and can't agree on various candidates and nominees, but the Democrats can unify behind a bald-faced lying criminal. Why can they do that? Well, because it's all about control, and they believe that history is on their side and that what they believe is their cause will be the end of history. And this is why they say every other institution must be like them. There was a great piece in the Wall Street Journal a couple of months ago about how Hillary Clinton, raised in the United Methodist Church, how the United Methodist Church has become a liberal Democrat party. That's all it is. It's just basically it's a lot of liberals that get together on Sundays, and I guess it's a Sunday supper club is what it's become. And they can sit there and talk about social justice and the like, and how we have to make everybody equal and take from some and give to others. And churches that don't adhere to that policy or that belief, well, I'll give you a fine example. Look at the Roman Catholic Church and look how liberals keep demanding it change and be like the Democrat Party. Well, it's not the Democrat Party, and it's not the American church either. It's a worldwide church, so it doesn't necessarily have to conform. But look how they're telling Christians around the country that your freedom of religion doesn't protect your freedom of conscience, so we're going to force you to violate your conscience and bake that cake or take those photographs. This is what liberals do. They want to force people to do things. There was a great piece as well today at the Daily Signal about soda taxes. It was pop where I grew up, and I think it's pop throughout much of Idaho. But back on the East Coast, all of the people who write these things, they don't know the word pop. They just know soda. But we'll call it soda because that's what the writer calls it. The notion is among Democrats that if you drink too much Coca-Cola, it's bad for you. So they have to stop you from drinking Coca-Cola. They can do that by adding extra taxes on it or limiting the size of the Coca-Cola bottle you can buy. Now, if you're like me, you'll buy two if they make the bottle smaller. But the notion is they know better than you do, and you're just a dumb dummy, so therefore they have to control the volume of Coca-Cola that you're drinking. And they have to go in your church and tell your church and all of you who are practicing your faith that you are wrong and that you have to conform to what they believe the world should be. And by golly, if you don't, there's going to be heck to pay. Throughout the world and throughout human history, people who've gained control, like these people, have ended up killing people by the millions who wouldn't agree and wouldn't be controlled. China, Russia, the Eastern Bloc of Europe, Pol Pot in Cambodia. Don't you see what's going on here? This is the end game. It's incremental, but this is what these people are working on. They're coming for you. A vote for any Democrat, from Hillary Clinton at the top of the ticket all the way down to Jill Scheme at the bottom of the ticket here in Twin Falls County. A vote for any Democrat is a vote for the totalitarian impulse among these people. It's got to be stopped. So keep that in mind. Today is the last day of early voting in Idaho. Keep that in mind if you're one of those early voters, but also keep it in mind on Tuesday. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Got a couple of comments coming up as well if we have time from Congressman Jason Chaffetz of Utah talking about Mrs. Clinton's predicament. Fellow told me on Facebook this morning that Raul Labrador has endorsed Russ Fulcher for governor. I don't know where he got that because it appears nowhere on any of the, you go even do a search on the names, it will not come up. Because I was pointing out on Facebook earlier this morning the reason that Congressman Labrador has been very generous to people, Republicans around the state of Idaho who are running for office either first time or for re-election this year, is because people are going to owe him a lot of markers when he decides to run for governor. So somebody said, well, I don't see that happening. He endorsed Fulcher yesterday, but no such news anywhere that actually happened. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Quick reminder, coming up after 9 o'clock news, we expect to be talking a little bit about firearms this morning as we do Friday mornings. We'll be joined by Forrest Anderson in studio from Washington Street Pawn. Now, generally we have the two guests who come in. Todd Eccles is normally with us as well. Todd had another obligation today, but we do want to point out, and we'll mention it while Forrest is here too. Todd has a training course coming up, and we'll pass along. He runs Patriot Defense, so if you need to get trained in firearms use, he's a guy to go to, and he'll make sure that you know what you need to know because, let's face it, a firearm. There's a story on the wire today. A fellow Apparently was trying to clean or put away a firearm yesterday in eastern Idaho and ended up shooting himself in one of his legs. So all the more reason to tune in a little later this morning and hear some of the advice these guys give you on a regular basis. And all the more reason, too, perhaps to go through one of the courses. Coming up next week on our program, I do want to point out we're not going to have any political guests on Tuesday at all, not on Election Day, because no one would have any time to respond if anyone said anything too terribly inflammatory. And then Tuesday night, we're going to have election coverage right here. We may be joined, and we're working on it right now. I can't guarantee it, but we may be joined by U.S. Senator Jim Risch because he doesn't have to seek election this year, re-election this year. He can relax a little bit, and he's going to perhaps offer some just a play-by-play for us, commentary on what's going on election night if we have an opportunity to speak with him. So we're looking forward to that possibility. And then Wednesday morning, we'll be joined in studio by Dr. Jonathan Tripp or one of the doctor's associates from Tripp Family Medicine here in Twin Falls, located on Fillmore Street, directly across from the main post office. We do want to remind you Dr. Tripp's office is still looking for new patients, and they can often see you on the very same day. If you call up in the morning with a medical issue, they can try and squeeze you in often by no later than that afternoon. And remember, life's too short not to feel good. There was a liberal writer at a publication called BusinessGreen.com. Ever hear of that? I hadn't either, but I saw it this morning. Will President Trump cancel the Paris Agreement celebrations? The Paris Agreement's coming into force as an historic achievement, the writer says, but its early prospects now rest with the U.S. electorate. Now, the writer claims Trump simply can't go cancel the Paris Treaty, although didn't the president do an end around the Senate in order to get this thing through? I don't know if it's going to hold or not, but the writer says Trump simply cannot cancel the agreement. In fact, it'll take time for him to pull the U.S. out of the deal, and even if he did, U.S. involvement in the protocol from Kyoto provides a precedent for a climate treaty operating with some success despite U.S. opposition. Then he goes on to say, our good friends, the lying Chinese, don't like the notion that Donald Trump would do this because, golly gee, you can always trust those communist Chinese, and they say that they're going to actually honor all of these agreements. I know they've got to be smoking some really good reefer over there at Democrat Party headquarters. The writer says he will be able to cancel many of the Obama White House's executive actions that underpin America's Paris Agreement action plan, but even here, many states will defy him. Which states will defy him? Oh, all the ones that will end up voting for Hillary Clinton. But there's this big swath of red in the middle of the country. I was watching some fellow who's in the political know talk about this a couple of weeks ago about what might happen to the future of America. And the guy was saying, I don't believe, I know who it was. It was Father Dwight Longdecker, who's a clergyman, and he writes a great political blog as well. He was saying, I don't see America spinning off into where people secede and you have a civil war or any secession whatsoever. But he said, I can see this maybe being more like the Confederation Canada has, where certain parts of the country who don't believe some of the crap that they put out in other parts of the country are allowed a degree of autonomy in their decisions. So in other words, if you live in Alberta or Manitoba and you don't agree with all of the liberals in Ontario and Quebec, then you have some ability to make your own regulatory decisions in the western provinces. And he says we might see something like that develop in the United States, which would be good for a place like Idaho. It would also be good if the voters in eastern Washington and eastern Oregon, because we've heard that they'd like to join Idaho and leave those liberal states because they can't get along with their coastal neighbors. I think what you're going to see is a map redrawn in this country where people say, no, we're going to live with our own kind and we're not going to live with you any longer. So states themselves could split. There's precedent for it. West Virginia all the way back in 1863. Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story. Look, we'll take some of your telephone calls this morning. It seems that you've all had difficulty dialing in yet, at least so far this morning. It's 8:30, 31 right now. 90 minutes left of our program. 90 more minutes of self-righteous, God-fearing pomposity ahead. And we have some more campaign news, too. Jason Chaffetz says, heck or high water, they're going ahead with a potential prosecution of Hillary Clinton, even if she loses or wins next week.